Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Your Favorite Sisters, the Spiritual Sisters podcast, with a returning sister who just got back from Hawaii. And I don't know anything about her trip. How was it?
Hi, it's me.
Hi.
I know, I ghosted everyone. It was great.
You would think she'd be relaxed, but she looks a little unrelaxed.
I just started my period 20 minutes ago, and I was feeling it right before and during the second half of my trip, because
I'm sure the boys that are listening love hearing that.
We don't really have male listeners.
We have a few.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was actually a really great trip. I don't want to be negative or take away from any of it, but it was so interesting. Not to say that was my fourth trip to Hawaii, and I was spiritual before on my previous trips. And in fact, I had my awakening, or it was one of the first trips that I took post-awakening. And this trip was really interesting because the land there is really imbalanced. So I don't know, you haven't been to Hawaii, right?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so it's the divine feminine. It's the heart chakra of planet Earth. And in Waikiki, it's literally like LA on an island. It's very developed on one side, but when you get onto the other side, it's very poverty stricken. And I don't know if it's hard to say because it is an island, and you don't really know what the standard is for an island versus not, compared to like what we know poverty to be like here in the States. But it was really interesting to just see the different dynamic and just what the land is going through on a political level as well. I did get an upgrade. She got a new superpower, which I'm gatekeeping for the time being. So I think my body was just going through quite a bit because I went into it a little bit more, I guess, aware of just what's going on a psychic level. And in our room where we stayed, there was a lot going on. So I was like, I don't know if this is just the energy of the land or if it was the room, because it didn't feel negative. But Hawaii is going through something, guys. So, yeah.
How far were you from the Maui fires? I don't know anything about Hawaii. I don't even know what island you were on. Like, how close to that were you? Because when Brianna went, I think they were in Maui. Like, they were pretty...
She went to Maui. I went to Oahu. And Oahu, so the North Shore. So I was where the North Shore is at, but I was staying in Waikiki, which is it's in Honolulu County. And it's very divine femme, very relaxed. It took me 4 days to get relaxed. So that just tells you like
the whole trip.
Well, I mean, it was an 8-day trip for the most part.
Oh,
so it was like half. It was like, 7-8 days. So it was like half of it because I took time off from work as well. And it just, going from like being in your masculine to going to being in your feminine to coming right back to being in your masculine and just grinding and work, which we're actually talking about today. Shit has to change, not just in Hawaii, but like in the world, and just like the lenses that we're operating from, especially as females. And I've just, I feel like that trip was almost like a gateway for the shamanic work coming in. So yeah, lots to think about, lots to reflect on, but I really feel bad for a lot of the locals because I was talking to the locals there, a couple of them, which I really enjoy. And they were saying in about 5 to 10 years, they're going to have to relocate because they can't afford to live in their home. So like for me, I felt really bad, and I was like, I don't want to contribute to this. But at the same time, it's like this land doesn't make money unless it has tourism.
And right. That's the catch-22 because they wouldn't make any money. And that's how they make, I think, most of their money. So if we weren't there, there wouldn't be much going into it.
So I was talking to that was one of the locals. Then I messaged Nichole. And I was like, Nichole, you're going to love this shit. So with my girlfriend, this, of course, that was in the North Shore, right? And there's this crystal shop. And there's this crystal shop called Lumeria Crystal Shop. Shout out to anyone out there. Yeah, because it's Lumeria land, right? So those are the aliens that inhabit Hawaii. And he said, I was like, hey, are you born and raised? Like, like just getting to know him. And he's like, yeah, like when you grow up on an island, you're kind of ignorant to the rest of the world. And he had said that he went and visited to Arizona recently. And turns out that a lot of Hawaiians are actually relocating to Arizona and Texas because it's cheaper. And he was
interesting.
Like, and he's like, yeah, it is it was like a whole new world. It was completely just so different than what I've known for my entire life. And he was saying, he's like, you're never going to see a native Hawaiian on a political ballot because they're the ones that are very observant and taking care of the land and tending to the land the way that it wants to be taken care of. And I thought that was so interesting because a lot of the names in Hawaiian, they translate to very they have very meaningful names.
Mm-hmm.
And Waikiki translates to, I hope I don't butcher this, but it's multiple spring flows or water, like basically like bodies of water, like ponds of water.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, when you're in Waikiki, you don't see any of that. And I was like, it's so true. And I was like, the word that immediately came to mind was mutilation. The land has quite literally been so mutilated. And so when we were there, I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm in a fucking vortex again, which is exactly how I felt when I was staying in downtown San Diego. Because when you're in a city, I don't know if people know this or not, same shit for New York, which I don't care for New York. Shout out to all those that do, but it's not for me.
Never been.
I don't think you're missing out, to be perfectly honest. There's rats on the street. It's gross.
That's what I hear.
Yeah. And essentially, you are in a vortex because the buildings, the skyscrapers, are quite literally making geometrical shapes that keep you in a vortex. And downtown LA is very similar. So that's a lot of like the area that is Waikiki and is just very developed. But again, like if you go and see the different areas of the island, it's very different and it's unbalanced. It's almost like a flip. But there's a lot going on there and the land definitely needs healing. And so when I did my ritual, I could truly just see how much of I think it's anger and it's bitterness that I would say of the people that are there, which rightfully so, because they have to leave their home in about 5 to 10 years. So shit definitely has to change. But in our own way, we went to just cultural sites and donated there and, spent our money there so it can help to sustain that, because it turns out a lot of the sites like that, certain beaches are actually donation based and they're not for revenue. So just contributing where we can made me feel a lot better about the trip.
You texted me. You didn't text me about that piece, but you texted me to tell me about something else that was going on there that I found really interesting that you didn't share.
Oh, okay. Thanks for the reminder. There was a lot going through my brain as I was sharing that. But so the other Hawaiian local that we spoke to, he was in the North Shore. He lives around the corner. And he was also saying that, a lot of this is like favoritism based because a lot of the land is owned by like generations of Hawaiians that have lived there. And he was pretty much sharing, and this was the story he was telling me before I get to what I'm about to share. He was saying that, there's a military base there. And what he's paying for like less than $1,500, some two, military guys came in and paid $4,000. So of course the landlord's going to, take the $4,000 over the less than $2,000 that they're being paid. But he was like, yeah, there's just a lot of weird shit going on that's not being reported in the news because of course they're not going to report that because they want the tourism, just like shit that we know about Vegas, which I don't think you've ever told the Vegas story, the one I'm thinking about with the really hot guy. And can you share that at some point? We should do a Vegas story at some point, or like a Vegas episode of just like the different haunted hotels and the shit that goes down there that no one talks about.
There's not enough information out there about it though, because they keep it very hush hush.
Yeah, exactly. So same goes for this story, but he was like, there's some weird shit. There's been like a string of murders that have happened that haven't been reported, in the way in which that they've been murdered is very questionable. I'm not going to get into the specifics, but my friend that I was with was like, I've seen enough serial killer shit in documentaries to know that this is a pattern of a serial killer. And of course, they're not going to report that because you're a fucking sitting duck on an island. Right? So I was like, oh, Nicole's going to appreciate this. And then you laughed at it. And I was like, that's it? That's all she's going to give me? She's not going to have thoughts to share about this?
I was really busy last week. I had like 2 PTA events the same week. And so I think I volunteered at the school I think I did like 10 hours worth of PTA work in 1 week, which is usually what I do in a month. And so I was in events like just for hours and hours, or sending emails or drafting emails. Like I was so freaking busy last week. I was just, yeah. So I probably, depending on when you sent it, I might have been doing something. And yeah, it was a week.
Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting I'm not surprised, to be honest. I was like, oh, it's kind of, not time for it, but I'm surprised that it's almost taking this long for that to happen. At least that we know about, because it's kind of like the best environment for the serial killer to have multiple attacks, I guess.
Good job, United States, taking over Hawaii, and now we're driving the locals out. Good job, US.
Didn't know this, and this is where I'll leave it at, but do you know that there's a whole island that is only inhabited by less than 200 people, and it belongs to one family, and they purchased it from the Hawaiian kings and queens in the late 1800s, and they have no one's allowed on there unless it's by invite, or if you're a family member of the Robinsons. It's Nihai, I think is what it is, but they have a close collaboration with the government, and I almost wonder what is going on that island that is hidden because only certain people are allowed, as well as the government officials.
Yeah. Good job, USA.
Anyways, what are we talking about? Oh, how are you, and what are we talking about today?
I'm fine. I don't have time for a check-in because we're at 11 minutes. So I'm great. We are talking today about work, right? So what it's like pre-spiritual awakening, and just kind of how we were functioning and how probably many people function pre-spiritual awakening, what it's like when you're in it, when you're doing the work, because I think that's been such a huge, I almost think that's been the biggest change for me post spiritual awakening and like during the healing. I think that's where I noticed the most changes, the most resistance, just the most difficulty. I think it's work related for me compared to, like relationships or family. I think it's work. And so I thought it would be kind of important to speak to that, because we have jobs that we work full time, like most people. And we have jobs that aren't maybe really aligned with what we want to be doing. You have at least your business, so you get to do some of that on the side, so that's nice. But eventually, I think you would like to transition out of the kind of work that you're doing now and have your business be your full-time work. So
yeah,
we're just going to kind of talk about what things were like for us, like pre-spiritual awakening, some of the challenges that we had and just what it's like. And hopefully you guys take some of what we say and maybe resonate with it and understand or think, oh, you know what? This kind of sounds familiar. I'm not the only one that feels this way, or I'm not struggling in this way. Because I think for me, especially, and I'll speak to it when we get there, but I think there was a lot of resistance, a lot of judging of myself when I started to become so unfulfilled and unhappy, and thinking that I had to stay, or thinking that there was something wrong because I wanted to like do something completely different. And I really judge myself for that. And I'm just getting to a point, I still judge myself for it, but I'm trying to do that less. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So one of the things that I think was really present for us both, actually, maybe not as much for you, but you can speak to it. But I'm wondering, pre-awakening, I know I did feel really stressed, right? So some things, some challenges that we might have pre-awakening is, that we're maybe not feeling fulfilled at work, or there's conflicts for whatever reason, being stressed out. And we know stress is, a pretty much normal part of any job, right? Even if it's something that you love. Like for you love doing readings, but I'm sure there is still a degree of stress that comes up for you at some point. But I think, that was something that I wonder, was that present for you? Because you were really in your job. You loved it. And, you've spoken a lot about what happened as far as, what kind of led to you leaving the other job. But was there a point, I mean, I know that was a stressful job, but was there a point that you felt like you weren't being fulfilled in that job? Because I think, like you said, you would have kept going had all that not happened.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was it was the last year. It was about a year and a half that I was really there. Well, I left. Okay, so I had my awakening at the end of 2018. Left I was ready to leave in 2020, but I couldn't because of where the world was at that time. And just like certain things that had to happen. I didn't leave until October 2021. However, I was ready to go, I would say, after that first year of the awakening, because it becomes harder to work your full-time job once you have an awakening. And once you have that awakening, you also are very aware of the practices in your workplace, the people who aren't aware. So like say your boss, certain habits that are ego-based that show up in a workplace, just of like what maybe expectations that said bosses might have of you in terms of performance. And here's the thing, like companies are going to take and take and take. They're whores. They're going to take as much as you give them.
They're whores?
They're whores. They're whores.
Oh.
Yeah. So for those of you
whores
who,
take and take and take?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
So it was literally, actually, this was from said boss before. He's like, the company, I'm not going to say the name, but I'm sure some people know where I worked before. He was like, said company is a whore. It is going to take and take as much as you give. And it's true. And
that's how all work is, I think, though, for the most part. Like, I wonder how many people can say, oh, no, my job doesn't.
I don't think, I mean, here's the thing. We also created these companies and these organizations and these patriarchal capitalistic structures. And that's kind of where I feel like we're at a turning point. It's like, when is this going to change? It's kind of the same thing for Hawaii. Like, I feel like there has to be a shift. And I think that that's that shift that everyone's talking about with like the 3D moving to the 5D. And it's just like, I think collectively, and I don't know if this is true for you, at least the people that are within your immediate circle, like your friends and certain family members, them wanting more, like more for themselves, or having different expectations of their workplaces, or just a little bit more of that fulfillment. Because I know for me, the people that I work with and like I'm friends with, immediate family, it's like, I think they're at least starting to question if this could look differently for them.
Yeah, I think pre-awakening, I was still, I still enjoyed my job to an extent. And then it got to be, I think probably like what kind of caused it was, okay, I don't enjoy this anymore. I actually don't only like not enjoy it. I actually kind of like dread it. I dread it. No, not hate it. I dread it. I like dreaded it. It took a lot of energy. It burned me out. And I think that before all this happened, that, a lot of us kind of have the belief that we're not maybe supposed to enjoy work, right? Because work is just a means to an end, right? How many times do you hear there's just a means to an end? Work is what allows us to go on vacations to Hawaii. It was what allows us to have roofs over our head and clothes on our back, right? And so it's kind of, well, we're not really supposed to enjoy it. And so I think I just kind of had that attitude of, well, I guess I'm just gonna enjoy it, or I guess I'm just gonna not enjoy it because you're not supposed to, right? Realistically, people don't enjoy their work. And in the environment that I was in, so when I started, I already knew that I didn't want to stay more than five years or so. That was kind of my cutoff. And there were people that worked there that had been there for years. Decades. And most of them, I would say 80% of the people that had been there for, longer than 5-10 years, the ones that we call like the lifers. Were the most miserable people. And I would purposely stay in my office just to avoid hearing them complain. So during lunch, I wouldn't eat lunch in the lunchroom. I would take my lunch back to my office because they're always just complaining. They're so miserable. They're so unhealthy. They're so stressed. Yes. Like, I was just like, no, this is never going to be what I want to do. But again, there was that thought of, well, you're not supposed to enjoy work and, whatever. And I remember my husband had said he had read something years ago that they had talked about how some of the most like happy people as far as like employment wise are people that change their jobs or their careers every, maybe 3 to 5 years, because it's like, okay, time for something new, time for something fresh.
They're the happiest. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Versus people that are going to stay somewhere for, 20, 30 years and they hate it and they're over it. And I see that even at the new place that I'm at, the people that have been there forever, I'm just like, why are you why are you like this? Right. And they're just so unhappy. But again, I think we have that mindset of, well, this is just what I have to do and people don't enjoy their work. So I'm just going to stay here forever because it's comfortable and I know it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why it didn't maybe at first bother me as much, where I was like, okay, well, it is what it is. And then after that, kind of, I would say COVID really, the pandemic and the shutdowns really changed a lot of people's perspectives about work and about enjoying what you do. And right, because I mean, everybody slowed the fuck down.
That's feminine energy.
Right. People were learning how to bake bread. We were making, tortillas from scratch. I learned how to make flour. I learned how to make corn. Like we were just slowed. We were slowed down. And people were learning new skills and, taking up new hobbies and then I think that's when people started to realize, oh, okay, I can do things differently and life doesn't have to be this grind and I don't have to do something that I hate forever. And I think that was part of it. 2020 I think was really when it was kind of eye-opening for a lot of people. My awakening didn't come for a while after that, but that was the start of, okay, it doesn't have to be this way, right? People were working from home and they were getting just as much work done from home, if not more, than they were driving to an office every day and being around a bunch of miserable people.
I would say I do think people are still thinking a little bit differently than maybe they were in 2019. However, I do still see a lot of the same, like right back to where it was right before 2020, where people kind of just forgot about that and forgot about what it was like to be slow and what their lives look like during that period of time. And I almost feel like there's maybe like another reset, arguably, that could be necessary. However, I do think, because as an astrologer, you look at the astrology in the summer before the year that's coming. So I need to start that like in June, July. But I do think that the world's going to look a lot different after this election. And so it's like new world order type of energy come next January. So maybe that's the reset that we'll all be needing because everyone's forgotten what has happened since 2020 or in 2020.
Yeah. And then you spoke to, maybe people realizing that they can have more or maybe want more or seeing that things can be different and possible. I feel like it's a split. I almost think that I do have some people around me that want more and that, maybe that want more, but they don't want to do it differently. Right. So they want more, but they think the way I'm going to get more is I'm just going to like work harder. Right. So like that kind of work harder, but not working smarter. So I'm going to work, 2 or 3 jobs, or I'm going to try to get extra hours doing this when it's like, well, you could try to do something completely different and not as stressful and not as time consuming. And then I think there's some people though that are very comfortable and that are just kind of thinking the way that most people think, well, this is just work and this is just the way life is. So I'm going to go along with it, or I'm comfortable where I'm at and I don't want to leave because I don't know. The unknown is scarier, right? It's like, well, what if it's way better? Right? What if what's out there is way better than what you're doing now? And yeah, I do know a lot of people that are really complacent and it drives me crazy because I just want to shake them and be like, oh my gosh, there is so much more and so much better out there that you have no idea about, but you're just too unmotivated or complacent to do anything different.
I think that's the hardest part about being that like almost trailblazer for those around you and being that expander, because you have to go and find that out for yourself, which is in tandem to the spiritual awakening and the workplace challenges that happen when you have a spiritual awakening. It's because you almost have to figure that out and go through those challenges and then show that for someone else around you that it is in fact possible. But that doesn't make it any less uncomfortable for you to experience it first. Would you say that you were complacent before your spiritual awakening?
Yeah, because I had that mindset of, oh, this is just the way things are. This is just, the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
People always talk about, right? How many adults, so like mom and dad's ages or
fucking boomers.
Around there.
Y'all fucked
What's
us
up?
up. The fucking boomers.
Right.
You
How
fucked
many
us
how many
up.
of them
No, they're
how many
okay.
of them are just stuck in that?
Take mom and dad out of it, right? It's their generation. They're like, we have the best generation. It's like, well, yeah, and you guys fucked it up for the rest of us. I just read a statistic that millennials are the most educated generation, and yet the most underpaid and dissatisfied with their workplace satisfaction. And I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah. But how many of them love what they do? Probably very
millennials?
few of them. No. Sorry, the boomers. How many of the
Mm.
boomers love what they do? And how many of them are just doing what they've always done or doing what they were told to do, right? Oh my gosh. How many times did we hear, go to school and get a good job and get your retirement and your 401k and like get you some good health insurance and like, and
But
so we did, right?
we did
followed
that.
directions and we did that. And then we're like, this shit sucks.
This
Like,
shit sucks. Yeah.
for some people, maybe it doesn't, but I'm sorry. For me, that sucks. And I don't want to do that forever.
And not to toot our own horns, but like Nichole and I have fucking masters. Like we did everything by like the blueprint. And just to add to your point, like it fucking sucked. Like there's no fulfillment. The bosses that we're reporting to that maybe followed the same path and the blueprint, they were fucking miserable. And that passes on because you don't quit your job, you quit your boss. And also
I didn't quit my job though. I didn't quit my boss. I quit my job. My boss was actually really good. Yeah, so that's where I think we differ. I think if I could have my old boss at my current position, life would be great. And not that there's anything wrong with my current boss, like he's fine, but my old boss was really, really good. So if I could have her where I'm at now, like life would be golden.
Oh no,
like
I quit my own
work life
boss.
would be golden. So I think let's kind of switch to talking about, so that's kind of where we were at pre, and then we're in it, and now we're like, okay, this sucks, and
that's the worst part. It doesn't get better,
still
people.
In it. It doesn't get better. No, it gets worse. Sorry, guys. This isn't going to be like a, oh my gosh, like a heartwarming, like encouraging episode that like we're going to tell you it gets better. It doesn't get better. No. We're not on the other side of it yet. It sucks. So
we'll do a part 2.
We'll do a part 2 when we're out of it in however many years. So, So how were things different for you once you kind of went through your awakening and realized, oh, I actually hate this. I actually don't want to do this forever. I actually want to do something completely different. Like, how did that kind of change the way you saw work and the way you approached work?
So 2 things. I've always been a hard worker. Like we are not lazy in this family. I will say, like, that is just not in our DNA by any means.
I want to be lazy.
Right? But we just...
The Manny Jen in me won't let me.
But that's the other thing. We struggle now. That's one of the struggles, is with like being lazy or pulling back our energy and maybe not giving 110% and just doing 90% because that's someone else's 100. Not even 90%, 70% because that's someone else's 100, right?
Right.
So I think before my awakening, I changed my life and my life fit to the job I was doing. Whereas now the job fits to what I needed to do for me so that I can.
That's such a great point.
Period. And I don't fucking feel guilty about it. I'm like, no. And I do what I need to get to, what I need to do. I do the bare minimum and my job's getting done. Here's the fucking annoying part. And this can be said for cancers. I want to also say that from the system perspective of human design, Manny Gens and generators, there's a couple placements that speak to this, but your organizations and leadership will want more from you because they're more aware of what you can put out. And I'm just like, fuck y'all. No, like you guys get what you get and the rest of my energy, because that's also another thing. Your energy, you become more aware of where it's going and how much you're allocating and spending to different areas of your life once you have a spiritual awakening, right? And I would definitely say that shows up in the workplace. The other thing is it becomes harder to just do human work in general because you start questioning what the point is. Like, what is the point of this? What is this contributing? Because you get that much more fulfillment by doing your own thing, or at least that's how I feel within my business. Like, granted, there is still struggles because, you have to make income. You have to think about things that aren't provided to you through your job, like insurance or 401k. Like, you're continuously investing within yourself. But I also think, and this actually came from Queen Mother herself, she was like, these companies are thinking the same way. They're trying to figure out, and it's not even guaranteed for them if they can continue to pay and give you a paycheck, because they're also figuring this out on their end too. I would say I get more fulfillment. And I never understood this because Dad, he used to be his own boss. He's like, I've never felt more fulfilled than working for myself as opposed to working for someone else. And I get that now, because there is a difference, because you can, for me anyway, I have endless energy working for myself, and I have to, we both actually have this because our root chakra is undefined in our human design. So that tells us, and one of the pieces of advice is that you need to put a time limit and like boundaries around how much you do work, and putting a stopping point to that. Otherwise you can just keep going and going. And for me, I've definitely noticed that as well. Like, because I am fulfilled and I'm enjoying what I'm doing for myself. Whereas like for my 9 to 5, I'm like, thank you. I'm grateful. This is exactly what I needed. But I have a life outside of this place. And I would have said that when I was working my corporate job. But also my corporate job was like, I was making a lot of money. I was very secure. I was in a high position for a very young age. And I think that also fed my ego. And that's the other thing. So you're working from an egotistical place when you are following the blueprint, one would say. You go to school, you make the money, you know, all the things. But then again, it's just you're a cog in the wheel, and you're not really, unless of course, like that is where you feel that you need to be and this is what you're supposed to be doing. You are a cog in the wheel and further contributing to the patriarchy and the systems in place. I'm all for, by the way, a divine feminine matriarchy ruled world, which I hope that this is what we're navigating towards.
Not in our lifetime. It's not going to happen.
Don't say that.
It's not. It's not. Or if it does, it'll be when we're, old and decrepit. So it's not going to really matter much to us. But I don't think, I don't think the powers that be are going to allow that to happen anytime soon. So I would say one of the things that I kind of noticed when I went through my awakening and just how I was different at work, like I still gave, 100%. And I think, like you said, one of the difficult things is we do just what we are able to. And sometimes we do more than not that we're expected to, but sometimes we can do it, right? We can do whatever is asked of us. And I think that sometimes that bites us in the ass, because then it's like, oh, well, they've already kind of proven that they can do this, so let's give them more.
Dumb. It's so
dumb. Yeah, it's like, no. And that's kind of one of the things that is coming up for me at my current job, where it's like, okay, well, I've proven that I can do this, because it's not hard, right? I can do these things. And it's like, oh, okay, well, let's give you more. But I don't need
you more.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, I don't need to do more. I'm not being compensated for more. So why should I do more? So I think that's one of the things that I think was really, I think it's maybe even been more present lately than it was even a year or two ago, where I've kind of recognized that whole, oh, shoot, but I kind of made this an issue by just doing it, right? Because I can do it. And so, yeah, I need to keep that in mind for future jobs.
So that's actually where I went in differently this time, because for my previous position, I was like, oh, we're not repeating this pattern. So I think that it's interesting that it's coming up for you now. That's definitely one of those things.
Yeah, I like what you said about how now I forgot how you said it, but you used to work your job to fit your life around your job, but now you fit your job around your life. And I love that. And I think that that's what most people, not most people, but I think that's what a lot of people are missing, where we're so conditioned to do the opposite.
Well, one would say, especially in America, because I don't know where else I've really seen this. I don't know that I've even spent enough time in other countries or other places to speak to this or to observe it. But a lot of Americans get and associate their self-worth with what they do for work. Like, isn't that one of those like common topics you talk about? You're like, oh, how's the weather today? Oh, what do you do for work? Like, who gives a fuck? That's like not cool.
But I think too, I don't know, for me, what you do for work, it's more just like it tells you.
Icebreaker?
No, I mean, yes and no, but I think it gives you an idea of the person's personality, right? Oh, this person
Mm.
does this, right? Someone who is a kindergarten teacher versus somebody who is a college professor, right? Like they're going to probably have two very different types of personalities, two very different types of outlooks on life. Someone who is a like a computer nerd at work versus somebody who is a doctor, right? It kind of just gives you idea like, oh, this person's really knowledge and versed in this area, and this person's really knowledge and versed in this other area. I don't think it's necessarily a status thing. I think it's just also like, oh, okay, like now I kind of know why this person interacts with people the way that they do, because you can tell a lot also based on how people interact, right? And then sometimes their jobs are really big clues into why they do have social interactions the way that they do. Just think about someone who, like, I'll use a computer example, right? Someone who is working, with computers all day long and not having a whole lot of social interaction, they are going to be very different, like at a party, probably, than somebody who is doing therapy. I don't know, right? Someone who's a doctor and is seeing people all day long and is having to work with different personalities and has to approach people a certain way, right? So for me, I think it's almost like, oh, okay, that makes sense to me. Like they do this. I understand why they are this way.
I never look at it from the personality aspect of it. So I think that's really interesting. I think for me, I'm just kind of like more observant of how they move in the world or move in like group like settings. So I guess if that's associated with personality, that makes sense.
Right. But yeah, so what they do for work is probably going to give you some insight into how and why they move that way through groups. Right?
Yeah.
Someone who's in HR is going to move in groups a lot differently than somebody maybe who isn't in HR, because they see a lot of things, they hear a lot of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's going to be, it just kind of helps you understand a little bit better.
Yeah.
So I think that's why, for me, that's why I'm always interested in what people do. Like, not to be like, oh, they're this or they're that, but it helps me just, get a gauge on their personality.
Okay. So, question
Hmm.
pivoting a little bit. So, now that you are in this bridge job, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
in this bridge job, and you know that this isn't forever or even
Mm-hmm.
hopefully for much longer, given where, your personal life is heading in
Mm-hmm.
hopefully the near future. How would you say your spiritual awareness and your spirituality and your relationship to that impacts just how you move throughout the day at work, the decisions that you make about your growth in a workplace role, and then even just like what you want to do for yourself? So it's three-parter.
I think that it helps me like not get so not down, but when it's a rough day, for me, it's not like, okay, well, fuck, this is just my life. It's going to be like this forever, right? It's
Mm.
more of a, okay, well, this is just a rough patch in something that isn't going to be a long time thing. I can get through this. But even so, like my new position is so much easier and less stressful than my old job. So, like my rough days are, a kid spitting on my games, that we're playing, and I can deal with that, right? So I think it's just, okay, well, I know I'm not going to be here forever, so I can tolerate this. Or these days are few and far between versus before, where the days were just a lot more heavy because I was dealing with a lot of heavier stuff and difficult, sessions and difficult topics and things like that. I think also I'm able to really take my breaks, which I know sounds funny because, everybody takes a break, but I don't feel as pressured to keep working and not take breaks. So now it's like, okay, I can take this break, and I'm really good on some days. Wednesdays in particular, sometimes Tuesdays, are the days that I'm really good about taking like 10, 15 minutes out to do a meditation. And that really helps me to just kind of slow down or to do a tapping exercise or to do something. And so I think that really helps. And what was the third part? Or what was the other?
Moving forward, like what you're going to do for a position in maybe where you're at now or not, or leaving entirely, or even if you want growth.
Yeah, and then one of the other things that kind of came up for me, even this was like pre-awakening, was I don't have a desire any longer to be in positions of
Yeah.
like management or authority. Like I don't want to do any of that. I just want to come and go. I want to show up and do my work and leave. I don't want to be someone's boss. I just want to be told what to do and do it, and that's it.
And that makes it harder when they give you more shit and they don't pay you for it.
Right. But the other piece is I want to be my own boss, right? So I want to have a job where I tell myself what to do and nobody's telling me what to do, because ultimately I don't want to be told what to do, in the long term. But if I'm working, I understand that, okay, I have a boss and my boss is going to tell me what to do and I'm going to do it. But I ultimately want to have nobody telling me anything, and I just want to do whatever I want to do.
And that comes with its challenges too. Yeah, but I think now being kind of in limbo with both worlds, living both worlds right now for the time being, and hopefully not forever, or even. No, I think I still got about a year, but I'm also building a legit and healthy business, which for me feels comfortable because I want something that's sustainable. Whereas I think I've seen people maybe jump too soon. And for me, I'm just like, no, like my Mars and Taurus can't handle that. But I would say that you start to see, and the chances are that you probably aren't going to have a leader who is spiritually awake. You're just going to see issues within that leadership relationship as well, where it's like you're maybe a little bit more aware than they might be, and you kind of see like what is a little bit unhealthy within a 9-to-5 real world position that you're
you
living.
Mean everything?
Yeah. And also
everything's unhealthy about it.
It doesn't get easier, and your energy management, like working both, because we do have a lot of psychic spiritual girlies that are listening to this and that are part of our audience, like that energy management doesn't get better. At least, and if someone knows, please let us know, because we would appreciate that. But from my experience doing both, it is a lot.
Well, no, I think that some like practical tips that people can maybe implement is, and I'm better at giving the advice than I am taking it, but doing your energy protection on yourself when you come into work, before you're going to go into a big meeting, before you're going to go into any kind of interaction. So for me, I would sometimes forget and I wouldn't do it. And then I would be there in a really intense session, and I could just feel the energy coming at me. And I was like, oh shit, I didn't protect myself. And it was something that pre-awakening I wasn't even aware of, right? I would go into sessions and just kind of sit there and take it, and then wonder why I was so tired or whatever after. And then during, I guess, the awakening, or even now, it's like, okay, I need to protect my energy. I need to kind of bubble up, and I need to, kind of cut the cords after, so I'm not still attached to this person's energy. Even during, like we said, meetings with anybody, if you're going to be in a meeting with 20 other people, and even if they're your peers, well, you're still going to be picking up on their energy and how they're responding to the topic of the meeting, and how they feel about, things that are maybe being said or rolled out. So that's, I think, one of the things you can do. I think taking 5 minutes at the start of your day to ground into the day, and, doing a quick grounding meditation. I think doing some kind of clearing after any kind of big meeting, big session, big appointment. I think also you can take, 10, 15 minutes to get outside. That was one thing that I really struggled with, was going for some outside time. So getting, like my vitamin D and just, getting into like the fresh air, getting out of your cubicle or your office, wherever you're at. I think those are like a lot of really like practical steps we can take. And sometimes they're easier said than done, because sometimes it's like, well, I can't pull away from, what I'm doing for 10, 15 minutes because I need to get it done. I promise you, you will be so much more focused after those 10, 15 minutes. If you take them, you'll come back, your head will be so much more clear, and you'll be able to probably get through whatever it is that you were doing, maybe even quicker, because you had that mental break and now you have that clarity. So I think those are some things that you can do. One of the things that I really like to do also now is, especially when I'm working with the littles, on the days that I'm at the elementary school, I come home and I go straight to the shower. And I get all of, well, in that case, I get all their like germs off of me, but I also get just all of the energy from the day off. And I just kind of imagine, okay, like all the energies that's been attached to me throughout the day is leaving my body. And so I think that's a good way that people can kind of protect their energy on a daily basis going into work, and keeping those or putting those boundaries in place.
Yeah. And I would say if you do this at the beginning of your day, if that's part of your morning ritual, then that totally counts too.
Doing what?
Everything you just said, like protecting yourself, setting intentions, guard, like, all those things. I remember when I had my awakening and I was in the study mode and just ingesting all of that information. I read somewhere that anyone within 6 feet, which I think is really interesting, that when COVID happened, we were all asked to stay 6 feet apart. But anyone within 6 feet of you is within your auric field. And so I would go into these like really heavy meetings, right? When I became aware of that. And I would intentionally sit as far away as possible because I didn't want to be around any of the assholes I worked with. So.
Yeah, I mean, we all, at some point when we did in person, we were, seated 6 feet away. But I never felt that way about my coworkers either. Like, I didn't dislike the people I worked with. I didn't dislike my boss. I disliked the organization and the powers that be, and just the way it was kind of set up. And then just the other people that were around, again, not my immediate circle or department, but the other people that were just so negative, because then it makes you be negative, right? And I struggle enough with being a negative person that I don't need other people's negativity around me to make me more negative, especially when I'm trying to let that go and I'm trying to be more neutral, right? And maybe not trying to be super positive, but just trying to be more neutral and realistic. Like, I don't need your negativity on top of my already ingrained negativity. Like, keep that away from me. Like, take that somewhere else.
But that's the other thing too. You're more aware of your patterns when you become more spiritual. You're just like, oh shit, I'm like this. So, and you kind of just get tired of your own shit.
And what are you going to do with it, right? You're either going to say, oh, well, this is just the way I am and other people need to deal with it. Or you're going to say, well, this is the way I am and I don't really like it. So what can I do about it?
There's like nothing cute about your shit when it comes up. Like when you're in it and you have your awakening, like you kind of get just like, whoa, like this is the place I was operating from. So that's another perk of it.
It is, but it's also kind of frustrating when you're trying to be different and the people around you are not, right? So the people around you are complacent and have no motivation and don't want to do anything different, or think that they can't do anything different, right? So I think a lot of that too, I'm thinking back to the episode that we did when we were talking about money, right? Where it's people just think, well, I'm only going to have just enough money to get by because that's all I need. Well, who said that that's all you need, right? Where did you learn that? Where did you come up with the idea that you need to struggle or you need to live paycheck to paycheck because that's all you knew growing up, right? Where did you learn that you have to work really, really hard to get money, right? Some of the people that have been like really big expanders for me are people who are, they're hard workers, but they're not grinding, right? They're that hustle culture, I think, really fucked a lot of people up. I think
Boss babe.
boss babe, independent. Oh gosh, what was like independent women? Like, that's like messing with us, like we boss babed a little too hard. We got a little too independent. And I think that for some people, they think that it has to be that way, and it doesn't. But unless you know differently, and unless you're seeking out that information or seeking out those expanders to kind of show you otherwise, you're going to stay stuck there and wonder why everybody else is happier than you are, and wonder why everybody else is doing something that they enjoy more than you do, right?
Yeah.
So a perfect example. So I worked at a grocery store 20 years ago, and
Yeah.
we went to the local grocery store, and it was at Vaughn's that I used to work at. And I told my husband, it's crazy to me that people that I worked with 20 years ago at Vaughn's are still there. And they look miserable, right? Those people that are lifers. And, back in the day, having a grocery store job was good. This was pre-strike, right? When we did all the picket lines and the striking back in the early 2000s, like I was there for that. But the jobs were really good. People were getting paid well. They had good insurance. You got paid every week, right? There were a lot of perks to staying in a job like that. It also gave me carpal tunnel, at 21. So that wasn't great. I had to get surgery for that, in my late 20s, because I got carpal tunnel from just all that repetitive, movement, scanning groceries and bagging all day long. And anyway, the people are still there because they were told, because, 40 years ago, that was a good job to have, that paid well, that took care of your pension, and that gave you great health insurance. And so they're still stuck there, and I don't know, but they look really unhappy. They look really miserable. And I'm like, oh, thank God I didn't stay.
Yeah.
But again, that I knew I wasn't going to stay. That was my college job, right? That worked around my schedule, and I was going to get out of there. So
yeah, I was just thinking, I'm like, I wonder if like remote jobs are now almost, well, it depends, because there's a lot of different types of jobs that are remote. But I was talking to one of my doctors that we're going to have on soon, and she was pretty much speaking to like how, so when your energy is stagnant and you're just sitting right in front of a computer, which humans aren't designed to do. She was like, you're basically that much more susceptible to being energetically attacked because you're not moving your energy, right? So like humans are actually meant to be outside. You're meant to be one with planet Earth. Because I was thinking about the carpal tunnel, and like obviously I do computer work all day, so like my shoulder's been bothering me, and I have to like massage my forearm a lot more and make it a religious practice so I don't get that. And I was like, we've totally transitioned from those really like backbreaking, body abusive types of roles to this. And it's really interesting just to see the patterns evolve over a period of time and what that looks like for us just to make a living. Honestly, sometimes I think I'm like, who came up with money and why was it invented and what did the world look like before then?
My husband would say capitalism, because that's his answer to everything.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because before that it wasn't, right? You exchanged goods. You exchanged, goats for a child, right? You want to marry your child off? Okay, well, I'll give you a goat if you give my son your daughter, right?
And then
that
I'm
was
like,
currency. It was different.
And I'm like, money's not even real. I'm like, the government,
and it's going to probably change at some point, right?
I'm like, the government doesn't have
be money.
All of that to print. It's not even available in banks. It's just not.
They said that crypto, I think they thought crypto was going to be kind of like the next money, right? Because before that it was, right, it was just goods or gold or whatever it was.
Okay, so can we like leave them with something positive, because this has been not that.
No, this is what they came here for.
Yeah, guys,
okay,
it doesn't
queen
get
of
easier.
Positivity. What are we going to leave them with?
Am I the queen of positivity? I wouldn't say
no. No,
I'm not.
So what are we going to know? So what are we going to leave them with?
I was like, Nichole, you're giving me a run for my money. What are you talking about? I don't know. It doesn't get easier. We'll let you know in a part 2, hopefully next year sometime. But I don't know. I think, Nichole, I think you're going to be there before me with respect to just like the bridge and the hybrid and making a transition, even though it may not look that way on paper, but I feel like that might happen for you.
I think if we want to leave them with something positive, I would say if we think back to the episode that we just released about human design, I would say understand your human design, because I think that'll give you some idea of maybe how you operate in your workplace, how you operate in the world. Because as we were kind of speaking to in that human design episode, as a Manny Jenny, I have so many interests and I want to do so many different things, that the idea of figure out what you want to do at 18 and do that for the rest of your life doesn't work for maybe somebody like me, because I'm probably going to change my mind in 5-10 years, and I'm going to want to pivot and do something different. So I think understanding that, I think understanding where you get your energy from, right? So for those of us that are maybe lit up and driven by our own work, understanding that, okay, maybe entrepreneurship is something that suits me better than going to work for somebody else, because I have this energy that comes from what I'm doing. So I think that would be really helpful, because I would say once I learned that a Manny Jenny operates that way, I was able to judge myself a little bit less. Like I said, I still kind of struggle with the idea of, but I did all this and I should stay here and I should keep doing this, when like I'm just not built that way. And I think that for maybe the other Manny Jens, I think that'll kind of help you get an understanding of, oh, okay, I don't have an interest or passion for this anymore, and that's okay. I'm not meant to have one interest or passion for my whole life. So I would say look back, or listen to that and try to get an idea of what you are. Get your human design chart for free from oh gosh, I forgot what
My Human
episode.
Design.
My Human Design, but Jazz uses a different one.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, she was talking about like the colors were different too. Anyway, just find your human design chart and see if that kind of gives you a little bit of insight. I would say also take some of the tips that we gave as far as the practices that you can implement, as far as protecting your energy and grounding and clearing, and taking the breaks to go out in nature, or taking the break to do some meditation or to do something. I would say, oh gosh, what would be another tip? Do you have any others?
Well, I was thinking, I was like, yeah, you definitely judge yourself harder than I would in this instance, because I was like, no, I'm just going to do this because everyone's going to have an opinion anyway. So why am I going to judge myself? Fuck everyone. I'm just kidding. I love
but I think it's different, because yours is like, I think the business is, you have your MBA. So I think that's really practical for entrepreneurship and doing your own business, because you can still take the lessons that you learn and kind of translate that into anything that you're going to do, right?
I think so.
For me, I feel like it was one very like, you're going to do this and you're going to get this license and that's it, right? You can't really do a lot with that. So now that I'm wanting to move into working for myself, well, how is being a licensed therapist going to suit me working for myself? Well, it's not, because I don't want to do that anymore.
Here's the thing. The how will fuck you up. Don't worry about the how. That's why you have a whole team of guides, angels, ancestors figuring it out. If you're meant to be doing something, it's going to happen. Right. Also, I know Nichole did point out the whole MBA thing. I forget I have that, guys. So I will say.
So, but that is going to be helpful for you no matter what you do, right? Because you still need that business component, even if you're doing astrology work or whatever. You need that business component. That's going to be practical no matter what.
It definitely adds street cred to me. I will say that. I will also say Nichole's initials behind her full name. What is it? The letters? Is that what they call them? Definitely gives her street cred. Yeah, the letters, right? Because it's true.
Like, I don't even give a fuck about the letters. Like I don't want the letters.
Right. But compared to the people that are, and this isn't like calling anyone out specifically, but like it does give you street cred that you have this experience speaking to the subconscious or working one-to-one with people, where a lot of people spouting this shit don't have that. And that's not to say don't do it. I'm just saying, like, I definitely think that the things that you find yourself in, they don't make sense when you're in them before you have your spiritual awakening. And then when you have it and you're like, you look back and you're like, oh, this is why I did that. This is why I had this experience, because it's going to make sense down the road when you're really living in alignment. And so you asked for one more point. And I think one point I would speak to is, once you practice say like, your rituals, your cleansing, you go down the rabbit hole that's endless in this world and you apply that within your day-to-day work, you're going to get further and further down that road and you'll find yourself in transition or on the other side. And even though it is challenging and it is hard and there's challenges that come with being your own boss, whether or not you decide to start your own business, it is worth it. It's worth it because you're going to be that much more happy and you're going to, I think, honestly, like have a better idea of what your true purpose is in this lifetime. And that is not working at a grocery store. It is not working for a corporate environment, in a corporate setting for an asshole.
For some people, maybe it is, right? Maybe for some people,
chances are it's not.
But for me, it wasn't. It's not. Wait, one last thing though that I thought about is, and you guys, I just even thinking about saying it kind of makes me cringe because I used to cringe when I used to hear, or not cringe when I would hear it, but I would get so annoyed every time I would hear it. But practicing gratitude for the jobs that you have. And,
that's
but
true.
it really, it's
so true.
like, it would make me so mad. I would just be like, gosh, shut the fuck up. I don't want to be grateful for this. But when you start practicing gratitude for, okay, thank you for this job that is allowing me to have a roof over my head, that is allowing me to put food in my little one's belly, right?
Yeah.
That allows me to go on vacation, right? Practicing gratitude for that. Thank you that I have a job that I can go to, because how many people are struggling to find work, or how many people are struggling to, have the extra money to be able to buy new clothes for their kids, buy new shoes, because kids are always outgrowing their shoes, right? So I think when you can kind of switch it to that, thank you for this job that allows me to have health insurance, whatever it is.
That's so true.
And being really grateful for those things, it does kind of help shift your perspective a little bit. Versus, oh God, I fucking hate this place and I never want to fucking work here again, or whatever. I hate my fucking boss, whatever people think. But
yeah,
what were you going to say?
Well, I've definitely been there. And when you're just like hating the world, you're talking your shit. And I think now thinking back, I don't think I had the tools or knew how to navigate out of it. And practicing gratitude, writing down what I am thankful for, really helped me open up and find ways to kind of get myself out of that and eventually out of really unaligned jobs. Like, I never worked at a grocery store, but I did work at multiple restaurants. So like not working at restaurants anymore and things like that. So yeah, that's true.
Totally. Okay. Are you doing our card pull?
No, can you do it, please? I didn't bring one.
Which card deck are we using?
Which
one do you want me to pull from?
Whichever one you want. She's like, Nichole, don't be so negative. They're right there.
I just suck at card pulls.
No, you don't. Words have power, Nichole. That's why they call it spelling.
All right, we're going to pull from Work Your Light by Rebecca Campbell. Let me fill in. I usually always pull two from this, so it's going to be kind of weird pulling one. The ever unfolding rose, cracked open. It's happening for you, not to you. These jobs are happening for us. They're meant to serve a purpose for us. It's not a punishment. It's helping us get to the end goal, right? Should I read what the book says?
If you want, but that makes a lot of sense.
You know where it's at. This one isn't. I don't like the way the book is set up. There we go. Okay. The ever unfolding rose. The challenge of life is to keep your heart open when you most want it to close, to let life crack you open, to open through hurt and loss, to allow what is falling away to fall away. Being human is a courageous act. A life well lived is full of losses and tragedies as much as triumphs and adventures. Wherever you find yourself at the moment, life is coaxing you to keep your heart open no matter how much it hurts, to continually unfold, to let life crack you open. Perhaps you're going through a difficult time right now. Instead of cursing the difficulty, see it as a blessing. To open yourself up to the truth that perhaps, as hard as it may be, life is happening for you, not to you. And one day in the not too distant future, you may just bless the thing that broke you down and cracked you open because the world needs you open. Now is a time to go gently, to treat yourself like a tender, sweet baby, to wrap yourself in a blanket and trust that the mother has you cradled in her arms. The seas may not all be smooth sailing, but you are safe and you are held. One day, not too far from today, you will look back at the transformation and be blown away by the poetry of life. Everything is going to be okay. So, yeah, guys, just go ahead and quit your job. Life's going to be fine. The universe has you. Just kidding. Don't do that. That's horrible advice.
Yeah, that's true.
Don't quit your job until you have another job.
Facts.
Anyway, that is all.
Okay. Until next time, guys. Hope you
See you
enjoyed.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.